Hey, it's your old pal Lucid Stu again, and this is Stu's News, a review of North American high-speed rail happenings over the last month. In this American 250th anniversary edition, we'll take a look at what went down in June of 2026. Starting off with Brightline and the biggest news of the month, the company managed to once again avoid default and stave off some sort of reorganization for yet another month with a debt payment deadline extension and acquisition of a small loan from bondholders. The company is trying to find a path forward through a $5.5 billion debt load that it is unable to cover the interest on because it simply doesn't make enough money on operations. One thing complicating this is a potential agreement with Miami-Dade County wherein Brightline would provide commuter service to several news stations for the county along the freight rail right-of-way that Brightline has trackage rights to. That has the potential to generate additional income for Brightline. However, the situation is further complicated by a lawsuit against Brightline by the owner of the right-of-way over the commuter project, and also a federal grant for the project being held up by the Trump administration. Overall, some sort of restructuring, sale of the company, or bankruptcy looks likely, but Brightline is still somehow treading water. If we look at the monthly investor report, ridership and revenue are continuing to improve, but it's just not happening fast enough to keep the company from running out of cash, and soon. In terms of approach to service, Brightline seems to have figured it out, but likely needs several more years of similar growth to become solvent. Various paths forward could facilitate that, but there are too many unknown variables at the moment to say for sure what will happen. One other issue that has dogged Brightline is a high amount of right-of-way incursions that have led to over 200 deaths. Brightline is the deadliest passenger rail service in the country, and by a wide margin. Trump administration officials announced that newly implemented improvements to at-grade intersections along the route have resulted in a 30% reduction in collisions. Even still, these would need to improve another 30% just to bring Brightline even with the second most accident-prone passenger rail line in the country, which is the Coaster in San Diego County, California. In a similar financial boat is Brightline West, the project to connect Southern California and Las Vegas with high-speed rail. However, like Brightline in Florida, they are still charging ahead. According to Bloomberg and confirmed by Brightline West, 3 new construction contracts have been signed covering Southern California stations as well as track and systems installation. Combine this with an August 1st deadline for parent company Fortress Investments to contribute $400 million to the project, and the future is still quite hazy. Hopefully we'll get some clarity on that next month. This month we're going to wander the country some because I want to cover Acela and the NEC next, since so much is going on there. The most sensational news of the month is that a barge hit Amtrak's Susquehanna River Bridge. However, no damage was sustained. That bridge is scheduled to be replaced around 2036 with major construction on the new $2.7 billion bridges starting soon. Close by in Delaware, Alstom announced that they would be building a new maintenance facility for Amtrak's new and incoming rolling stock on the NEC near Newark. No word on when that's expected to be complete though. While still in the general area, $466 million went to Washington Union Station in Washington, D.C. to spruce the place up. This is National Railroad Partnership Program money. Typically those grants have been announced in blocks, but now we're kind of getting them piecemeal. New York Penn got a little of that money as well. There's still about $4 billion left to be handed out this year. If you have a keen eye, you may have seen this link to this year's selections. It's broken. Moving considerably up the coast to New Jersey, the start of construction on the Sawtooth Bridges project has been announced. This is a project to replace a series of flyover paths at a complex rail interaction just east of Newark, New Jersey. These new bridges will bring speed up to 90 miles per hour, commensurate with other aspects of the overall Gateway project like the Portal North Bridge. The Sawtooth Bridge's replacement is expected to be done by 2035. Close by, the Gateway program announced a construction contract for the approach to the planned new Hudson River tunnels. The $700 million contract only covers 1.5 miles of mostly viaduct through a marsh. Pretty pricey, but it's New Jersey we're talking about. Another cool thing happening in this area is the installation of a new camera at the site of the launch box for the TBMs that will excavate the mile-long tunnels under Hudson County. Currently, you can watch the TBMs being assembled. That is available along with several other construction cams on the Gateway Project's website. Go check them out. On the other side of the Hudson, Amtrak announced a pre-development agreement for the upcoming New York Penn Station Transformation Project. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority was invited to participate, but MTA head Jono Lieber took the opportunity to politely decline. MTA has a long-term lease at the station which guarantees MTA certain rights that may hinder redevelopment. This bodes especially well considering the contentious relationship between Amtrak and MTA of late. Speaking of the MTA, they've shared an update on the Penn Station Access Project to bring Metro North trains to Penn Station via the NEC and 4 new stations along the way. This includes an image of continuing work on one of the stations as well as a before and after of the Pelham Bridge crossing, which in case you were wondering connects 2 golf courses. One of those could house 10,000 people according to an average density in the Bronx, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. Before we part the NEC, let's look at the Amtrak numbers. Strong growth across the board month over month in revenue and operating earnings, up slightly in revenue over May of 2025. Keep in mind these reports run a month behind. Still, operating earnings were up handily year over year with a very strong overall take of $52.4 million, although that's about 15% short of the record from last November. Overall, this fiscal year, Amtrak ridership on the NEC is up 5% compared to last year, which itself was a record year. That'll do it for Acela and the NEC. Before heading west, let's see what's happening with the R2R project in North Carolina. R2R is a project to upgrade partially abandoned CSX right-of-way to a grade-separated 110 mph standard for integration into the Southeast High Speed Rail network, cutting an hour and 20 minutes off a trip between Raleigh, North Carolina and Richmond, Virginia. Construction has begun in North Carolina, where work is occurring on the first section of the project between Raleigh and Wake Forest. At an event centered around one of the grade separations in that area, a Federal Railroad Administration official announced a $65 million grant for the project. Given the timing, this is likely National Railroad Partnership Program money, which is trickling out, but it's not clear. I never thought I'd say this, but can we get the Biden administration back? Okay, now we'll head out west and stop by at Texas for Dallas-Fort Worth high-speed transportation. The cities of Fort Worth and Arlington ordered up an economic impact study last year meant to counter a similar one done by the city of Dallas. The results were served up this year. Unfortunately, I can't find the full version of the study. Based on this summary that was presented to the Fort Worth City Council, it appears to judge the impact of an entire Texas high-speed rail network, including a greenfield route from Fort Worth to the Mexican border. And of course that generates an impact put at something like $3.5 billion a year for the 2 cities, but without a cost it makes it difficult to figure out if it's a good idea. Wild guess, I'd put a system like this at around $100 billion. Hopefully the full report will be available soon so we can dive into it without a filter. That's all for Texas. Now it's time to see what's going on with California High Speed Rail. A bit of a quiet month, it's about time, right? The California High Speed Rail Authority has put out a request for qualification for design and construction of the Madera to Merced part of its initial operating segment. This is the very first part of this process to get this to construction. If you've been paying attention to this channel, you know we've been talking about the possibility of Merced being left off the iOS completely, so what does this mean? Well, the rubber doesn't hit the road until the chosen contractor gets a notice to proceed for construction, and that's still a ways off, But this does open up the possibility that maybe the California High Speed Rail Authority is going for it on Merced, even though they probably don't have the funds to pull it off. Yet another wrinkle and more action for your prediction markets. With that, let's take a look at the Central Valley progress. Capital outlay budget summary. Well, there's always next year because there are 2 months of reporting left in the fiscal year, and they've come up $800 million short of the budget by spending sums like $102.8 million in a month. I get asked why they're not spending very much, and one reason is that they don't want to run out of cash. They currently have $4.3 billion stockpiled. Federal funding is 91% spent. 94% of the bond money from Prop 1A in 2008 has been issued. They're getting pretty close to their only income being $1 billion a year from the state cap and invest carbon tax. And even that has been called into question lately thanks to some moves by the California Air Resources Board that could put the squeeze on the amount of money the state greenhouse gas reduction fund produces. Back to Central Valley progress. Design build expenditures, Daily average on-site workers, 1,461, fairly middling for on-season. Construction progress, structures, 3 more structures completed, 1 new one started. That is 10 behind the old schedule and unfortunately 3 behind the new schedule aiming for September 2027 completion. Guideway, 3 miles completed in April. Keep in mind these reports run 2 months behind. Also, 2 new miles of guideway started. Completion is 8 miles behind the old schedule and on target for the new schedule. Finally, some good news there. CP1 earned value chart, not encouraging. Schedule performance index has dropped to 0.91. 1 indicates on schedule there. The long-term trend line could be worse. The short-term trend line is, well,
inconceivable.
The CP23 chart is a different story. Both the long-term and short-term trends look fine. And then they have that little blip on the end for the Tide Arch Bridge over State Route 43 north of Hanford, which isn't expected to be done until March of 2027. That wraps it up for California High Speed Rail. Now we'll head to the Great White North and see what's happening with Alto in Canada. Transport Minister Stephen McKinnon, with the tacit support of the Liberal federal government, has gone out of his way to suggest an additional stop in Ontario at Kingston, which is a city of 130,000, roughly halfway between Toronto and Ottawa. This also shows a preference for the southern of the 2 potential alignments through Ontario. The route is far from set, but rural voices are calling for transparency in the process of examining the potential route in order to choose a final route. Putting the cart before the horse to an extent, Alto has to put out a map of a broad potential corridor to start, then they have to survey that to figure out the best final route. This is apparently a problem, but you can imagine how people would be complaining about them jumping the gun if they'd started with a narrower one. The urban-rural divide isn't the only one for the project. There's also a Liberal-Conservative one and an Ontario-Quebec one. Parti Québécois, which supports provincial independence, has made it clear that it will oppose the project if it comes to power in the next election in October. Right now they're polling at about a third of the vote. And surprise, Alto isn't the only high-speed rail project in Canada. Alberta has announced a 30-year rail master plan that includes high-speed rail between Edmonton and Calgary, which are 300 kilometers apart and have a combined population of 3.5 million. Alberta has put $15 million into initial planning over the next 3 years, so we'll see what happens. That'll do it for Canada. Let's see what's happening in Mexico. During the June 25th Mañanera de Pueblo, which is a week-daily press conference put on by various Mexican officials, including Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, there was an extensive update on national passenger rail construction progress. For high-speed rail, they reported on lines between Querétaro and Irapuato, as well as Saltillo and Nuevo Laredo. For Querétaro, Irapuato, 25 kilometers of roadbed and embankment has been graded. They're also working on 8,400 meters of viaduct. They're also building a station for the city of Celaya, population 415,000, in place of a current rail yard. This is being accomplished with a freight bypass. Saltillo Nuevo Laredo, there are 31 kilometers of roadbed and embankment graded. They have 6,300 meters of viaduct under construction there. Between those two cities is the city of Monterrey, a metropolis of over 5 million. Pre-construction activities are taking place there, which includes planning for 9 kilometers of viaduct. The Mexican government is also building one or more factories to produce concrete sleepers currently, as they will need 1.5 million for all of these project sections combined. And lastly, Mexico is getting ready in the next few months to accept bids for an additional 551 kilometers of passenger rail right-of-way, which would complete the roughly 1,200 kilometer line from Mexico City to Nuevo Laredo. Design speed for all of these lines is 200 kilometers per hour, but so far in service, speed has been limited to 160. Regardless of the service speed being below the channel threshold of 175 kilometers per hour, we'll at least be talking about these as long as they're building them. That's all for Mexico. Now it's time for Stu's Boo Boos, where I go over everything I missed or got wrong last month. The $466 million grant for Washington Union Station in Washington, D.C. was late-breaking news last month, and I simply missed it. That was caught by commenter Xavier Domenico. You get a gold star. Thanks, Xavier. That's why we do Stu's Boo Boos. Our combined reach is greater than mine alone. That brings your Boo Boo finding gold star total to 31, silver stars to me for a Boo Boo free month 12. As always, if you find a Boo Boo in this presentation or something I missed, let me know in the comments. If it's a good one, you win a prize. A special thanks goes out to the Stu Crew Discord server for all of their help. If you'd like to join our motley crew, check out the invite in the description. Also in the description, you will find a plethora of ways.
What is a plethora?
You can help out the channel or just use the QR codes. Also, please consider my change.org petition to put pressure on the California state government to properly fund California High Speed Rail. Read and sign it if you like it, would you kindly? You do not need to be a resident of California.
Simple. Anybody can do.
And hey, I can't forget to give a shout out to my Conspicuous Patreon supporters. They make content possible for me and you. They know who they are, and now everybody else does too. You too can add your name to this list on my Patreon page. Plenty more videos to come. Up next, we're going to take a look to see if U.S. passenger rail has been any good for the World Cup before it's over. But that's all for now. Until next time, I'll see you on that big, beautiful freeway.